期待一场朴素的对话，触摸这个世界的无限可能，跨越时空的阻隔，记录时代的脚步，在每一次靠近中看见未来。我相信，百闻不如一谈。2022年1月24日，中国和以色列迎来建交30周年。当天，中国国家主席习近平同以色列总统赫尔佐格互致贺电，庆祝两国建交30周年。习近平指出，2017年两国建立创新全面伙伴关系以来，各领域交流合作富有成果，为两国人民带来实实在在的利益。赫尔佐格表示，建交30年来，两国交往日益密切，双方在经济、农业、卫生、旅游和文化等领域合作取得丰硕成果。30年前的1992年1月24日，以色列时任副总理兼外交部长戴维利维来到万里之外的中国北京，与中方正式签署建交联合公报，翻开两国和中犹民族关系史上崭新的一页。尽管中以建交时间不长，但在两国元首战略引领和双方高层积极推动下，两国各领域务实合作取得了丰硕的成果。为庆祝中以建交30周年，以色列驻华大使馆官方微博发布了视频，响亮地用“老朋友新征程”的口号来庆祝这个特殊的纪念日。对话触摸世界，梦想点亮时代，美好的时代值得更好的你。梦之蓝，梦六家。大使您好，感谢您接受我们的专访。习近平主席和以色列总统赫尔佐格互致贺电，庆祝中以建交30周年。我们也看到，从2017年开始呢，中以就建立了创新全面伙伴关系。那您怎么评价两国这一关系定位呢？
Both of our nations are ancient nations, and we had collaborations in the past already since the Tang Dynasty and maybe even before. There were Jewish communities in China, small in size, but there were Jewish communities here, both in Kaifeng and in Harbin in the 20th century, and Shanghai, of course. Everybody knows the history of the Jewish community of Shanghai. So these bonds keep us until today. And of course, going even back in history, in ancient times, there were probably a lot of contacts also that we are even not aware of, because if we think about the Confucian way and the Jewish philosophy, there are a lot of similarities. And this was very well expressed by both our presidents when they greeted this high-level meeting on the 24th of January. And the way ahead is to continue the innovative partnership that we have launched in 2017. We want to continue having all these important economic and commercial ties with China. China is the second largest economic and trade partner of Israel. Last year we saw an increase of 30% in our trade, reaching around 22 billion US dollars. But the mission is to sustain this level of economic and trade collaboration.
以色列呢也是一带一路的沿线国家，我们也看到由中国公司投资运营的以色列的海法新港已经正式开港了，而且这也是以色列60年来的第一个新码头。那您觉得海法新港对以色列的这个发展意味着什么？它的重要性体现在什么地方？
The operation was launched in September last year, and we are very satisfied that a Chinese company is operating this port with all the very sophisticated and modern equipment that was brought in. And you have a lot of expertise of running efficient ports and modern ports with a lot of capacity. It's very important that we finally have upgraded the capacities of a port in Israel. And unfortunately, the operation started with the pandemic times, and that's why it's not working fully yet. There's still a lot of problems in logistics and global maritime transportation, as you are well aware. But when it works in full capacity, hopefully very soon, it will be definitely a major contribution to Israel being such an important spot geographically in transportation of goods from east to west.
我们看到中国和以色列的贸易额去年是达到了228亿美元，这个大幅的超过了上一年度。而且呢，我们看到两国的贸易额呢是在现在全球疫情的挑战之下呢，实现了这样的逆势上扬。您觉得这透露出什么样的信号？
First and foremost, that we work hard in order to make it possible that despite the very fact that we don't have physical interaction between our business communities, nevertheless, we can still see an increase, such a dramatic increase in our bilateral trade. It shows that with hard work and when you are very focused on what you do, you can still get good results. There is a great interest in the Israeli business community to continue doing business in China, in those sectors that are accelerating here, water recycling, green fertilization, and of course another sector that is of great interest to China and to the world is the medical technology. This was part of the 5-year plan, yes, to build many more hospitals everywhere, and this of course is of great interest to us, to introduce more technologies in the medical world, to do more research on not only pandemics, yes, but to do research on cancer, on all these diseases that affect our lives in the modern era.
以色列地处地中海东南沿岸，是全球最小的国家之一，没有丰富的自然资源，更多的是漫漫黄沙、干旱少雨。美国作家马克·吐温19世纪60年代游历那里时，曾留下这样的评价：这是一片没有希望、沉闷又令人伤心的土地，荒凉、干旱、战乱，以色列人常年生活在危机和紧迫当中。 这也迫使以色列人另辟蹊径，以求在夹缝中获得生存。为实现粮食和农副产品自给自足，以色列在20世纪60年代开始探索高科技农业之路。没有充足淡水资源，就发明了喷灌和滴灌技术；没有优良土壤，就创造了无土栽培技术；没有适宜作物生长的夏季，就研发出了光热网膜技术。科技创新最终让以色列从沙漠变成农业绿洲。 也因为科技创新，如今的以色列在能源、电子、软件、生命科学等多个领域处于全球领先的位置，成为名副其实的创新的国度。那么，仅有900多万人口的以色列是如何在贫瘠的沙漠上建设成创新国度的呢？我们知道以色列呢也是以创新著称的国家，包括像以色列的创新局的官方网站上都能够看到。 创新是以色列最有价值的自然资源之一。我们知道，一般理解创新呢，应该是后天形成的。为什么以色列会把创新当成自然资源呢
We don't have natural resources in Israel. We always say that we were blessed only with honey and milk, and the others got the oil and the gas in the Middle East. But now we fortunately found gas offshore Israel, and this is a major natural resource. So we had to think what we do in order to excel in our economy. We live in a very problematic geographical environment. We are a small country. We wanted always to be a very developed economy. And when we looked around and we saw, okay, what can we do in order to grow economically, we said high tech is the best engine of growth. So the government invested in these ideas. It all started by a governmental venture capital that supported the high-tech companies that started booming up. And since we know that, like in the Chinese tradition, education is very, very important, so we put a lot of emphasis on education of in the high-tech sector, in exact sciences, in physics. So a lot of the new high-tech companies emanated from youngsters that developed something in the military, and when they left the military, they opened their own companies. So we based our natural resources, which is the brain that we have, and the good education level that we have in Israel.
所以你刚才也提到了，这个大脑就是你们的自然资源。确实，因为在我的印象当中呢，这个不仅仅是这个创新了，而且好像感觉以色列人呢特别的这个重视创业，所以以色列也被称为是初创企业之都嘛。我看到好多以色列人50岁、60岁还在创建一些这种新型的这种科技公司。那您觉得为什么以色列会有这样的非常浓厚的一个创业的氛围呢？
First and foremost, to make money. Because there are lots of success stories in Israel of people that made a lot of money because they started as a startup company and developed it into a very successful company that was later on maybe bought out by an international conglomerate like Intel and others. So people say, okay, if somebody else can do it, why can't I do it? The best example is the success stories of others, yes? So people said, okay, we had a good career, now we have some money, we will put it in a startup, and maybe it will one day be bought by a big conglomerate around the world, and we will be very, very rich. So the incentive is to make money, for sure, yes? And also to develop good technologies that can help the world. This is something that is very much in the minds of a lot of our youngsters. How they can change the world, how they can really contribute to the changing the world so it's a better world in environment, better world in medical technology, better world in social applications, etc. So it's money and changing the world.
我们也知道以色列呢确实人口规模不大，但是呢确实走在这个科技的前沿。那您觉得以色列，比如说在这种创新的激励机制方面，或者说这个创新型人才的培养方面，是不是有什么秘诀？
We start from very young age, from kindergarten. We teach our children how to be open-minded, to think out of the box, not to think conventionally, and also to ask questions. Israelis are people that always ask questions because this is part of our tradition. We are never accepting whatever we are told. If you have a question, you should ask. So this is what we teach our children from very, very young age. And this is how we develop their open mind, entrepreneurial spirit, to look at the world in a different way. Now the government, it supports the transformation of academic research into industrial research. This is the government is pretty much involved in that. But there's a lot of private sector investment in research and development, in incubation, in acceleration, in the venture capitals. There are also investments of private people in venture capital. So this is a very active ecosystem.
我们看到，在全球疫情的挑战之下呢，以色列的这个经济仍然是取得了非常强劲的一个发展。2021年的这个经济增长率呢是达到了7%，而且还维持了一个比较低的这个失业率。那以色列是怎么做到的？如何在这种疫情的挑战之下，还能够实现经济的这样的一个增长目标？
The main reason being that a lot of the startups started during the pandemic, when people were at home and they couldn't go to work, and they developed a lot of new ideas, and a lot of the very successful companies, even the unicorns, the big, good unicorns of Israel of 2021 were developed a year before, in 2020, where people sat at home and thought about new ideas. And when we got out of the pandemic in 2021, there was a major boost into the economy and acceleration, and this was developed into the high figures that we saw.
现在中国呢也致力于创新型经济的发展，而且创新呢也是中以两国关系定位的一个关键词。那您觉得未来，比如说在这种致力于创新发展方面，中国和以色列有什么样的一些优势互补的合作机会吗？
We have, in the last mainly 10 years, we have signed a lot of R&D agreements with various municipalities, provinces, in order to encourage joint research and development between Chinese companies and Israeli companies. So this is one of the very important tools to see this collaboration between our companies. Then there's the Sino-Israel Technological Park in Changzhou. This is a very important place where Israeli technology is being introduced into China. There's a technological park in Shanghai. And there are many small technological initiatives all around China. Very important collaboration takes place in Guangdong, in Guangzhou. There's the Bio Island of Guangzhou, which is a major collaboration between an Israeli fund and a local Guangzhou municipal fund. So these are just examples of what we do. There are many other examples. There are a lot of tools to bring both sides together to do research and development, to develop new technologies for the better world.
过去20多年里，以色列和巴勒斯坦的和平进程屡屡陷入僵局，领土问题、耶路撒冷归属问题、巴勒斯坦难民问题等横亘在巴以关系之间，长期难以解决，造成巴以冲突旷日持久。2021年，以色列政坛经历了政治地震，执掌以色列政权12年的内塔尼亚胡下台，让位于时年49岁的纳夫塔利贝内特。新政府包括统一右翼联盟、中左翼政党拥有未来党、中间党派蓝白党联合阿拉伯党等8个政党，是以色列历史上首个有阿拉伯政党参加的政府。然而，今年4月以来，巴以双方爆发了多轮冲突，局势再度趋紧。执政联盟中的联合阿拉伯党随即宣布暂停在执政联盟中的成员身份。那么，贝内特所领导的执政联盟将如何处理巴以问题？2014年就陷入和谈破裂的以色列和巴勒斯坦民族权力机构，又是否有重启谈判的可能？
我们看到去年以色列国防部长甘茨也和这个巴民族权力机构主席阿巴斯举行了会谈。您觉得现在的这个以色列政府是不是在着力于改善以巴之间的这个关系？您觉得接下来可能会有什么样的一些措施来推动巴以关系改善？
There are a lot of meetings that take place between both sides, yes, on the ministerial level, people-to-people, business. We have always had this kind of interaction. It's true that in the last year there are more ministerial meetings that are taking place between the different ministers in Israel, being the Minister of Defense, Minister of Finance also, and the Palestinian, the President of the Palestinian Authority, and other ministers on the Palestinian Authority side. These are not the best years to conduct political negotiations. We have explained why this is not being possible at this time. We have a very difficult composition of our coalition government from left to right, and it will be a bit difficult at this stage to resume the negotiations on a political solution.
我们确实也发现，贝内特总理上台以后呢，积极地改善同一些中东国家的关系，像阿联酋、巴林、摩洛哥、苏丹等等这些国家关系的改善。那您觉得这种政策的变化，它面临的这个挑战主要是什么？
This government has accelerated the normalization of relations with the Gulf countries and Morocco and Sudan. But it was the previous government, the outgoing government, that signed these agreements. The major challenge was to show to ourselves, first and foremost, and to our new partners in the Middle East that these are not just papers that we signed, that we are sincere. And we want to invest in this normalization of relations and not to keep them empty. So the challenge was to put a lot of content into these new relations. Also, we saw a lot of interest on from Bahrain and United Arab Emirates, and definitely from Morocco, to accelerate relations as much as possible. So it's a two-way street. We found very good partners that are willing to collaborate, that are eager to collaborate in any field possible.
对话触摸世界，梦想点亮时代，美好的时代值得更好的你。梦之蓝，梦六家。
我看到您和中国的渊源可以追溯到您的学生时代。您当时呢是做这个东亚的这个研究，而且您也在香港、北京等地呢都任过职。你也关注过中国这些年的这个变化，您觉得中国的变化哪些方面给您的这个印象最为深刻？
Everything changed. China has changed its face totally. Definitely, when you look outside the window and you see the very modern construction everywhere. In the big cities, in these small towns, everywhere you travel, you see this dramatic change. It's more of an open society, I think, than before, especially if you go to the big cities. You see people that have had experience of living abroad, and they speak English. Multiple cuisines, not only Chinese, but you can get any kind of food that you wish, definitely in the big cities. One thing that fascinates us all, and myself since I've arrived, is this electronic wallet that takes you everywhere. You only need to take your mobile phone and you can really get along very well.
Just look outside from here.
Yes.
Everything is changed.
The last building in Beijing was the Kempinski Hotel. Anything behind Kempinski Hotel was farmland. People were cultivating their land here. This did not exist, yes, at all.
Big change.
Big change.
我最近刚看了一本书，就是这个名字叫《犹太人3000年》，然后其中呢就讲到了很多就是犹太人对教育的重视，而且最近还看了一部纪录片，叫这个《犹太教育探秘》，其中呢也谈到说，现在以色列好像也有很多虎妈，就是 Tiger Mom， 就是这一点好像和中国很相似。不知道您怎么看？以色列现在虎妈多吗？
I think the Chinese mothers are more tiger moms than the Israeli mothers. Yes, I think the Chinese mothers are much more pressing and pushing their children to excel and to be good students, much more than the Israeli mothers, I think. First and foremost, in Israel, the average family has 3 children, average, and sometimes even more, yes? So the mothers have to really put so much energy in each and every one. This is very important, because we know that this is the entry card to have a good career. And in this book, by the way, the title of the book is Chutzpah.
chutzpah 这是希伯来语。
Yeah, it's a word in Hebrew.
Hebrew.
But it comes originated from Yiddish. Yiddish is a language that was spoken by the Jews in Central Europe, which is a combination of Hebrew and German. Chutzpah means that there's nothing that would block you. Okay, just push, be very pushy. Yes. So this lady that wrote the book, she's an entrepreneur herself, and she puts a lot of emphasis in the book itself on how we educate our children to be entrepreneurs in the future. You can do everything. There are no limits, no borders. You can enter into a conversation of adults and say whatever you want, and this is chutzpah also, yes?
现在有很多的这个女性呢，都进入到政坛，而且从这个全球政坛来看的话，形成了一股他力量。您觉得就是女性进入到这种政坛当中，对于全球的这种和平和发展，会有什么不一样的地方吗？
I think that we bring some elements that into this world of peace and negotiations for peace that are more compassionate to a crisis. We can see broader scan, I think, of problems that need to be solved. We bring in a more emotional kind, I think, of a solution to a certain crisis. And I'm a true believer that we always have to keep the balance, gender balance. It should not be male only or female only. The balance is the best, because we can, as women, we can bring in our own way of thinking, our own vision of life, but the males also have their own contributions. So the best is to keep the balance.